of the day. I have to lean in a little bit. Okay, perfect, you can hear me now. So I run the content and advertising ecosystem here at mF with my coworker James, and it's an ecosystem that's so large. I mean, that just calling it content and advertising, it encompasses so much. It's not like the other ecosystems. So I put this panel together with my two colleagues here, and basically they come from very different sides of the content and advertising ecosystem. And I guess I'm trying to prove a point that at mF all things are connected. It doesn't matter what side of the ecosystem you're on, that you can learn something for everyone. So I have Nick here, who's specializes in chatbot AI, and then over here we have this man who specializes in ad fraud. So we're going to see if we can find any points of collaboration between the two. And yeah, so would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Is this thing on? Yeah. All right. I'm Nick Martin. I'm the co-founder of Direqt. We're a chatbot publishing platform. So the world's leading media brands use Direqt to build, grow, and monetize chatbot-based audiences, primarily within messaging apps. And so we're part of the mF for a couple of years, really focused on RCS and the carrier messaging space. So a lot of familiar faces. Good to see everybody, and excited to talk more about what we're doing in content.
Great. And Dhiraj?
I'm the CTO and co-founder at mFilterIt. We are a digital marketing fraud detection organization. We identify bad traffic in your marketing campaigns, whether you're running on Google, Facebook, or programmatic, or third-party networks, and we identify bots, and we keep them out of your budget so that your budgets can go to humans rather than bots.
Right. And right before we came on, Dhiraj showed me a meme that was actually very relevant to our discussion. Do you remember what the meme was about?
Yeah, it was a cartoonist cartoon, right? So this person comes in and says, hey, our bots, our AI-generated content is doing great. There's a lot of engagement on our AI-generated content. And then they're like, okay, but the bad news is that most of that engagement is because of bots, right? And bots are actually interacting with the AI-generated content. And that's the sad part of this world, right? Unfortunately, we look at bots, we look at ChatGPT, we look at voice bots, and we know that bots are capable to do a lot of things. But when we are running our campaigns, when we are spending money to promote our content, when we are burning money to grow our organization, we forget that bots can eat up that as well. And that's the sad part. Just talking briefly, one publication and multiple publications globally have indicated that machines have taken over the humans in the internet world. Just giving you some statistics, 67% of online traffic on the internet is machine-driven, is bots. Human traffic is only 1/3. And that's the size of the problem we are in. And expecting that your campaigns will not have the 67% of bots which are otherwise on the internet is just foolish. And that's where we are.
Nick, do you agree? Do you see some potential with AI and AI chatbots for misuse?
Yeah, I think it's just like any other format on the internet, right? So whether you're thinking about a website, a mobile app, or a chatbot, those are different containers for these consumer experiences, all of which have challenges around bot farms, click farms, the types of things that we're talking about here. And so no different than how you have to try to build products to prevent against that and have approaches and partners to solve on that front. I think that applies to the chat ecosystem. Our lens is really that it is a new type of application. And so the incumbent problems from previous application formats exist within chat as well. But there's also the same benefits and even more so. So again, those kinds of things are, I think, inherent to the internet at this point in time.
Yeah.
There's always going to be good actors and bad actors. We try to partner with the most reputable brands in the world. They obviously have really sophisticated approaches to solve for this, but to your point, it's a big problem. And it's one that's going to, I think, take a lot of energy to solve, or at least mitigate as best as possible.
Yeah. Is it possible, do you think, to fight fire with fire? Like use AI to fight, bad AI?
Yeah, I'll take that one first. The AI, to me, certainly seems like a bit of an arms race. And so we need as many good people trying to build good AI that is advantageous, not just from a business perspective, but really from a consumer lens. Certainly, I think no different than how, again, every technology gets manipulated, whether that's the fax machine or the internet. That's going to continue to take place. So certainly I think the AI wars are already on and will be very interesting to witness in the coming years. Certainly it's not my role to figure out how to solve that. It's not what we're focused on at Direqt. I don't know if you have a perspective on how you see that playing out in the AI space.
No, of course. It's not possible to have humans look at millions of transactions every day. You definitely need advanced data sciences to track that, monitor that, and identify weird patterns which are coming in on it. But the size of the problem is huge, and the money being wasted is huge. Let me give you an example. 2016 or 2017, on YouTube, a bot was identified. It was called the meth bot. It was out of Russia. It was estimated to be making $5 million per day. $5 million per day. And it was running for at least 6 months. At least. That's all they could identify. And at one point, the meth bot was controlling more public IP addresses than Facebook globally. More than 500,000 public IP addresses. And this was on YouTube, which is the darling right now of the advertising industry. Everyone is burning money on YouTube. And this was 2017. And guess what? No one got caught. That's the beauty of ad fraud. I mean, look, suppose I go and do a credit card fraud, right? I steal your credit card, and how much will I spend on it? $10,000, $5,000, $20,000. At some point, you're going to block that card, right? And if I get caught, I'm going to jail. Right? I'm going to jail for 10 years. The beauty of ad fraud is that you potentially earn millions of dollars, and you don't go to jail. So there is no downside to it.
Perfectly legal, yeah.
There are no laws against it.
Yeah.
So for the first time, last year, FBI, no less other than FBI in US, identified 2 people out of the methbot scam, and those people were foolish enough to come to US, by the way. Otherwise, they would have gone scot-free. And they went to jail, finally. And guess what? FBI found that there was no law against which they could penalize them, right? So they cooked up something under the wire fraud, okay? Wire fraud is the section of the US Constitution which talks about telegraph fraud and, on the wire if you're doing, fake transmissions. That's all they could catch them under. And when they were making $5 million per day, hey, I'll maybe do that for a day and retire, right? But that's the state of affairs we are in as of now. Globally.
We're in the wrong business. We
Maybe.
need to get into Afro. So, Nick, kind of moving along with that, why do you think it's important for the technology behind, let's say, conversational AI being open source and anyone can kind of access it?
I think in general, technology can be a force for good. I think if you look at what's happened over the last 20 years with the internet, there's, I think, 4.6 billion internet connections globally, right? That's access to information, opportunities for education, opportunities for connection and community, not to mention career advancement, right? You think about the network distributed workforce now. You can live in one part of the world and actually get hired somewhere completely else. That wasn't possible. And fundamentally, one of the reasons that's actually capable is for the fact that it is open and it is free and accessible. It certainly seems that AI is going to be the most transformational technology shift that we've lived through, certainly that I've lived through. And it would be a real shame if the access to that technology, the ability to benefit from it, was limited to certain parts of the world that have higher incomes, the ability to pay for access. And so, again, I think technology being a democratizing force has been a really big benefit to the world. And AI potentially being the most powerful shift we've lived through, it's really important that again, becomes open and available to everybody, right? So that different parts of the world don't get left behind where now in order to be relevant in your career, you need skills building an AI and you don't have the resources to access that up front. Like that could really exacerbate the problems in sort of the haves and have-nots. And you want the collective wisdom, right? Globally, you want many people being able to contribute to building these things out. And so I think at a high level, it's really about just fundamental access to technology that isn't gate-kept based on income levels, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Do you think, I think I asked this question to either of you, but do you think that conversational commerce can act as a gatekeep against bots. You know, so for example, if I'm paying for something with a conversational flow, would that be more difficult for the fraudsters to kind of abuse?
I doubt that. I think it'll be easier. Because if bots know one thing, they know how to interact with other bots, right? Humans have a tendency to make errors. Humans have a tendency to be randomized. Humans are weird. Bots are static. Bots are predictable. Bots don't make errors, right? And if you have something which is perfect, then most likely you have a bot. If you have a messy behavior, then most likely it's a human. So yeah, I think conversational, as more and more bots come into our lives, I think this problem is only going to increase. And that's why understanding the behavior of bots is probably important to identify the bots from the humans.
Yeah. Do you think, Nick, that AI is going to get better at the sort of messiness aspect of what it is to be a human interacting?
I think AI is going to get better at literally everything. I think that is the cat's out of the bag on that. I think that feels obvious where maybe it felt contrarian a few months ago. If you're familiar with the landscape of deepfakes today, like if you're on social at all, you'll see real ad campaigns with real spend behind them of very well-known influencers, celebrities on video, promoting a product they've never talked about, and to the trained eye, you can still discern that it's not real. To a nascent viewer, maybe a younger audience, maybe a much older audience, right? It is very, very convincing, and it's the first inning, right?
It's going to get better.
So, again, on all fronts, it's going to get better. It's a bit of an arms race, it seems. And there's going to be a whole new host of problems that are endemic to the technology. So, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Dhiraj, have you seen any of these sort of frauds using deepfakes? Have you come across them?
Of course. We keep seeing identity theft. We keep seeing these issues of being used for political discourses and extremism. So a lot of the bot issue is not just about media and budgets and costs. It's about democracy. I love what has happened on Twitter, and Elon Musk has done a great job blowing the lid off on what is the bot percentage on Twitter. Before him, Twitter was 2%. Don't ask too many questions. By the way, I don't know if you saw, they filed documents in that court case between Twitter and Elon Musk. They filed documents on how did they evaluate 2% bots. Guess what? They took 100 accounts, evaluated just 100 accounts to identify how many of them were bot or human. Right? Imagine millions of accounts which Twitter has, and their sample size was 100. Because fundamentally, platforms don't want to talk about bots. Bots, unfortunately, are extremely aggressive. They will shift the political discourse in the direction their masters want them to. If you want to go Democratic, you want to go Republican, you want to go left, you want to go right, bots will do that for you. And that's the power which they have on our interpretation, on our perception of what is happening in the world, which is the scary part. I'll just quote one thing, and maybe I'm too small to talk about it, is Barack Obama. Obama was on an interview with the Queen of England. And someone asked, after he left the presidency, and someone asked, hey, Barack, what do you think is the biggest threat of human civilization? Is it nuclear war? Is it climate change? He said, neither. It is information silos or information or disinformation being spread by bots. And that, in his opinion, was the biggest threat to human race, not climate change, not nuclear weapons. That's the state of affairs of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Nick, you kind of mentioned this AI arms race that's well underway at this point. Where would you say we are in this kind of Cold War? Like, what stage of the arms race are we at?
I think it's the very, very beginning. Yeah, I think for the majority of the world, November 30th, when ChatGPT launched, was kind of the first consumer interaction with sophisticated generative AI. We had all been using AI without knowing it for 5, 6, 7 years. News feeds, targeted ad campaigns, anything personalized on the internet. There's AI machine learning that's been at play, again, for a decade. But I think the chat interface in particular made it so much more obvious to the end consumer how they were interacting with an AI. And in the wake of that, it's now become the fastest growing consumer application of all time, reached 100 million users faster than TikTok and Instagram. And so, again, that just happened, right? That was 3 months ago. It's the first application. All the big tech companies are obviously now moving much more quickly to roll things out where they were, being maybe a little slower intentionally or unintentionally, depending on who you talk to. So I think it's the first inning. It's like the launch of the App Store, the iPhone in 2008. Mm-hmm. It's a watershed moment. It teaches the mass population the capabilities. That unlocks a wave of development from independent developers and businesses. And on the other side, consumer adoption. So like we're tracking these things. We see now there's bots being built for, and just to maybe on nomenclature, bot meaning a chatbot, chat-based application, an app you interact with through a chat interface. Not necessarily the same thing as an automated program that is being used to like manipulate clicks or activity online. And so we're seeing now there's AI experiences for every use case imaginable. So we've been coming to these events as Direqt for 3 years maybe here at the MEF. And historically, 90% of conversations around chatbots were around customer service, right? How do I, reduce my call center activity? How do I save money on my customer service operation? How do I take a customer problem and solve it more quickly? Because for the last 10 years, that's been the best use case of chatbots. And there's a lot of reasons for that we might not have time to get into. Over the last 90 days, now there's a chatbot that can tell you what to say back to the person you matched with on Tinder or Hinge to help you in your dating life.
I need that.
There's chat-based games. There's a game called AI Dungeon where you actually co-create the game you're playing through a chatbot because it's using generative AI. It's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure journey so that there's an infinite number of possibilities. That's spanning across every use case imaginable. And if you just look at how these things tend to develop, right, there's the watershed moment, everybody becomes aware, developers jump on, businesses invest in it, venture capital pours into it. That's certainly happening right now. And so it's just getting started.
Yeah.
I think when we look at this a year from now, we'll be laughing at where we were today and how quickly it's moving.
Yeah.
So the future is hard to predict, and it's not evenly distributed, but certainly it's coming quickly.
I think even in a year, the whole landscape will just be completely different. I'd love to know both of you, if you could. I know it's hard to predict, but let's say in 5-10 years, how do you think the advertising landscape will have changed in general?
I think it definitely has to change, and it will probably change not 10 years, but maybe in 3-4 years. There's a lot of political pressure on the big tech, big duopoly on how they're doing their advertising technology, which means that big changes are upfront. Privacy is finally getting a lot of foothold, especially courtesy the Euro and the GDPR guidelines, which means that the duopoly is definitely threatened far more than what it was just 2 years ago. My sense is that this whole freemium model or the ad-funded model, which has worked so well till now for the last 10 years, is probably going to reduce heavily, and subscription-based models will probably start making more sense. Which then is probably where bots, the good bots and the bad bots, will actually have a role to play, right? The good bots are going to support and help, right, in optimization, cost reduction, bringing information ability for us to interact with our girlfriends or figure out what poem to write on Valentine's Day. The good bots will do that. And by the way, from the statistics I talked about right at the beginning, about 65%, about 30% is good bots. By the way, what are the good bots apart from these side examples? The Google search bot. The Google search bot comes every day to your website, and you actually welcome it because you want your website to rank on top, right? So you want that bot to come to your website to go through the keyword and the content so that you can rank higher. But so those are good bots because they declare themselves as bots, and you can choose to allow them or not allow them. Bad bots are bots which obviously are not so polite, and they hide behind users to try and get their way through, either to steal your data, to scrape information on your website, make fake accounts, log in. A lot of people feel, hey, I use a two-factor authentication, I use an OTP. Anyone out there, just go on Google and search for disposable phone numbers. Using disposable phone numbers, I can make 100,000 accounts plus today, which are all OTP verified, all of which have a unique phone number for whatever you want. Facebook, for example, there's this Russian website, smsactivate.ru. Just have a look at that. Today, you can make 100,000 Facebook accounts OTP verified through an API, and then use those accounts to do whatever you want to do, to promote a certain post, to drive discourse in a certain direction. Those are all bad bots, and that's probably going to be that war: good bots versus bad bots. The good bots are going to control, the bad bots are going to do it. And to be honest, Terminator predicted some of that, right? So we're probably going down the actual cinema movie.
Yeah. And Nick, what's your, if you were looking your crystal ball, what do you see?
So I'll humbly disagree on moving towards subscription away from advertising over the long term. I think on a long enough time horizon, everything becomes ad supported. One really obvious data point here is Netflix, right? For the last 10 years, if anyone ever told you Netflix would have ads, you would have said absolutely no. Reed Hastings said absolutely not. Eventually, you run out of people who can pay. There are just not that many people in the world who can spend $10 a month on multiple services. So we work, again, with the leading digital media publishers. Very few have robust subscription businesses. A few do, right? As an example, the Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal have good subscription businesses. Why? Well, their customer is a high net worth individual, and the information they're getting is helping them in their career, which is very lucrative. So they can justify charging a subscription, and that business works for them. Other categories, lifestyle content, a little bit harder, at scale. Certainly it'll exist, it'll become more prevalent, but I think advertising will continue to flourish and only grow over the long term. And then maybe just two unique trends around that. One, we're already seeing really heavy adoption of what I'll call a chat-based advertising campaign. So Meta, Facebook, said that last year they had $9 billion in ad spend on their platform, where the advertiser was running a campaign where when the user engaged with the campaign, it took them to a chatbot on Messenger, WhatsApp, or Instagram instead of a website. So you're scrolling through Facebook, you click on an ad, it takes you into a chatbot conversation instead of the brand's website or to download their mobile app. They said 40% of their advertisers did a campaign like that, a click-to-message, chat-based ad campaign. 40% of their advertisers. Of those 40%, half of them now exclusively are promoting chatbots, meaning once they did it, they no longer went back to promoting websites. And the reason is, as humans, we understand conversation, we understand dialogue, and so the campaigns are performing better, right? Advertising is a business. You look at ROI, you look at ROAS. It's performing better than legacy mediums like a website. That's going to continue across all destinations on the web, on the internet, across different surfaces. And then maybe just really going more aggressive is what we could see. I think we had this influx of assistants several years ago, which were maybe premature. I think the promise of Alexa or Siri, the experience didn't really live up to it. It's good for the weather. It's good for playing music. It's good if your hands are tied up and you need to do a basic search. Now, the capabilities to deliver a really good assistant experience are certainly more available. And I think in a world where we do have really strong AI companion assistants, the opportunities for hyper-personalization only dramatically increase. Because if you're talking to a dedicated assistant throughout the day for every need and problem you have, the ability to deliver advertising and marketing and business integrations in a way that's more contextual to what the consumer wants should be much higher. And so, again, over the long term, I think we have more ads. I think more advertising campaigns are around chatbots, and I think chatbots themselves likely increase the efficacy of advertising.
That's great. Dhiraj, I think we're almost coming to time, but we did start a little bit late, so I think we can run over a little bit. For the publishers that Nick works with, is there any way you could advise them to avoid, knowingly or unknowingly participating in ad fraud? Is there anything that the publisher can do and in turn show to the advertisers that they're not doing this?
No, of course, publishers have a major role to play, and a few bad publishers end up spoiling the game for everyone, right? And that's where it's important for the good publishers to take a foot up, say, okay, we're going to put in technology which is going to prove that they're not actually generating bad traffic. And that's where more and more dollars will go towards good publishers and move away from the bad publishers. You talked about Netflix, right? So if you see, what's basically happening is a slightly more democratization process of these individual publishers who are coming up, which have large volumes, who are saying, okay, let's run ads, right? And within those walled gardens, small walled gardens like Netflix, like Disney Plus, and so on, you can actually have audiences, you can have different ad tech available so that you can track, monitor, and deliver campaigns just completely without depending on others. But then you have all your smaller publishers who actually end up getting aggregated up. And when you aggregate out, that's when bad publishers come in and create all this mess. So my sense is that publishers definitely have a key role to play. They should definitely try and invest into technology to identify and prove fraud on that there is no fraud on their platforms. And many times publishers just screw up small configurations which spoil this. I'll give you an example. Google search bot comes. It's a good bot. It's supposed to come on every website, right, to scan the website, which is fine. But when the Google search bot comes, you're not supposed to show ads as a publisher, right? Now, many times publishers miss out on something as basic as that, which means that the bot is saying it's a good bot, it's declaring itself as a bot, but publishers end up showing ads. And those ads cost advertisers money, but it also dilutes confidence in the system and the ecosystem. And for example, something as basic as that, but obviously moving forward to more sophisticated cases, something publishers should be careful about. And definitely premium publishers who can show performance, who can show value, will always get a higher wallet share compared to publishers who are just doing it for the short-term gain and short-term targets, and that's it.
That's great. I just wanted to say as well, in the last panel, each of us won a prize for knowing about gaming, so we're all nerds on this panel, so that's great. Nick, how do you think that AI and chatbots will affect the gaming landscape?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't consider myself a gaming expert. I will say it's pretty obvious it's already happened in terms of chat as a communication mechanism. You look at Discord as a companion to the gaming experience. I think Discord's in the neighborhood of 150 million active users. If you talk to somebody who uses Discord, they don't just check it, like they're on Discord all the time. Chatbots are a relevant part of the Discord platform. So I think that's as sort of a sidekick to the gaming experience, that's pretty obvious. Again, we are seeing investment being made in chatbots as a game vehicle themselves. No different than apps became a way you could develop games. We're seeing that in chat. I think that's going to continue to play out and be interesting. Right now, it seems to be really having a foothold around choose your own adventure, interactive storytelling, murder mystery solving. Those types of genres fit well, I think, with the format where the technology is at today. Certainly, the capabilities are much broader than that. Again, my perspective is it's day one, so what's going to exist is going to be much broader than that. That's probably the extent of my prediction on gaming. Again, I don't think that's something that we're thinking about too much as Direqt these days. Our content publishers are the ones who write stories, cover the news, curate and inform pop culture, less so on sort of the game development side. But it's certainly part of the broader ecosystem, and we do think that AI and chat in general have a really big role in it.
Great. Does anyone have any questions before we wrap up? Hello. You're in the front, so I'm picking on you. Press the button there. Do you want to introduce yourself? Well, we know who you are. We just talked to you, but
yeah, Paolo, CEO of Monday Digital. It's very interesting what you just said about the potential application on gaming. Actually, we see the content personalization as the natural evolution where AI can help big time, but it seems to me today AI is more generalistic. So do you think that the next big evolution on AI is exactly the customization per person? Do you think this happens?
I think personalization is one of the sort of major just general benefits of sort of advanced AI capabilities, and that'll play out across every medium and every use case. There's also some interesting stuff I'm curious to get your perspective on around using AI to generate game assets, where it's actually bringing the cost of game production down because you can use an AI to actually create characters, assets, things where if you looked at kind of what you were showing about the investment necessary in the metaverse and really rich gaming experiences, a lot of the investment right now in AI is about platforms that make it easy to produce all of these previously expensive and time-consuming in-game assets, and that could be a really interesting near-term impact on if the production of games from a cost perspective goes down meaningfully, what does that do to the broader ecosystem in terms of adoption, availability, and so on and so forth. So I do think personalization's one. I also just think the creative production is an interesting element, and then new formats over the medium term also seem compelling. But again, hypothesizing, right? It's hard to predict exactly how that'll play out, but there's investment across each of those, and they all seem compelling and to have some traction. Game asset production feels like it has the most momentum at the current moment, but I couldn't give you a really strong opinion as to why that is.
And then if I may, another one more related to the advertisement part. You say that the typical case of bad bot is a bot that is faking a user account, right? So don't you think that the solution would be simply to strengthen the process of verification of a new account?
Yes, and that's what two-factor authentication was supposed to do, and that's as I said, already kind of got bypassed with this concept of disposable phone numbers. Then we got into captchas and then recaptchas and recaptcha V2 and recaptcha V3, and then by the time we gave up, because even I struggle to sometimes clear the captcha code, and it's okay. My point is that how much more friction do you want to create into a user where you say, hey, you better jump through hoops for me before I let you come and give me $1 of your money, right? That's not practical. Businesses obviously want the onboarding experience to be quick and fast. They hate friction and they just want the money quickly, right? Which means that's not going to happen. The second problem is that especially on advertising side, by the time the user has come to you to create the account, you've already lost the money, because your typical payouts are on cost per impressions or cost per clicks or cost per visits or cost per install for an app, which means that by the time the user has come to you to create an account, in the marketing advertising space, you've already lost money. Now, you can protect the account creation with more and more checks, and maybe you can protect more down the funnel issues related to business fraud, if I can call it, where people are taking advantage of your referral schemes, your coupon codes, cashback schemes. That's also, by the way, a big issue. But from a marketing media perspective, we've already lost money if the user is at the account creation stage, right? And by the way, if you're running any campaigns on Google, on Facebook, on third-party networks, on affiliates, whether you're running app campaigns or web campaigns, whether you're thinking, hey, I pay on performance, I only pay when a user places an order, even there is fraud. We are working with these e-commerce companies in India where they're paying a commission for an order placed, right? And you would wonder, how can I go wrong? I'm getting the money. Someone is placing the order. How can there be fraud on that? Well, there's this concept called organic hijack. I can take your organic users and give it back to you and charge you a fee for that, right? And that's actually a big issue. It's called cookie stuffing, and Amazon detected this 10 years ago, and someone, by the way, went to jail for it, for a coincidence. But advertisers are not taking things like these seriously. They feel that, hey, I'm paying for performance, probably I'm good. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
Great. Well, I think we're coming to the end. I saw someone walk in with a glass of wine, so I think the party is already starting to spill over. So I just want to thank my guests for coming along. This is the end of the MEF Global Forum. We've had a great time. If you're watching online, unfortunately, you won't be able to come to the MEFIs, which are tonight, and then tomorrow we'll be in the FIRA for our global summit, or for messaging summits. So thank you guys so much, and yeah, good Global Forum, everyone. Yes.